You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. Great to have you here today. Looking forward to getting into today's Weight Loss and Wellness Wednesday. We'll be focusing on a lot of the nutrition that we provide for our private wellness clients and really anyone that I would say is going through any of our health-based protocols. So we let people know right up front, we're able to provide you, and we just try to help you education-wise, like right here in the Cabral Concept, or whether it's on Instagram, or whether it's in our, our private Facebook group that everyone's welcome to be a part of that community, that what we want you to understand is that we're here to help you, whether you're following a vegan-based diet, a paleo-based diet, a Mediterranean-based diet, any type of diet. And the reason is that we can make the majority of those diets extremely healthy and great to follow for essentially the rest of your life. Now, there's a few diets that you can do in the short term, which are okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, but they can be detrimental in the long term. And I've spoken about those before. I do hope that you tune into some of those previous Cabral Concept podcasts. What I'd like to do today, though, is let you know how a lot of the proteins that we steer people to if they're on more of a paleo-style diet, or they're on a whole food diet, and they don't want to be vegan, or they're not going for a vegan-based diet, is that we end up moving them towards a little bit more fish than meat. And I'm going to share with you just a couple reasons why, and then maybe the future, I'll do a whole podcast on the different varying proteins, how they differ, which ones you might want to have more of, which ones you might want to have less of. Now, just straight off the bat, the reason why I'm going over this topic here today is that we've been running a lot of omega-3 tests. So a lot of omega-3 tests at equilibriumnutrition.com. It's a simple test. It's a finger prick, which means you just take a drop of blood from the finger, you fill out the little spots on a card, you mail it in, and you get your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. It's one of the best lab tests literally in the world, completely understated, completely not talked about in the media in terms of a lab test. But the truth is that we know that omega-3 levels, and the reason I'm going to get to this in fish in a moment, omega-3 levels, if you have the proper ratio of omega-6s, which are a little bit more inflammatory, or a lot more inflammatory, than omega-3s, and the ratio we're finding is about a 3-to-1. Some people say 2-to-1, some people say up to 5-to-1. In our practice, our recommendations based on these labs, we don't let people get above a 5-to-1. We don't want to see that. Ideally, we want people at a 3-to-1. That's what we shoot for. So I've been running this lab test now since about 2012. And when I started running this lab, I was like, well, most people are good with their diet. It's not going to be an issue. People eating a healthy diet should have proper levels of omega-6 to omega-3 because they're eating their nuts and their plant-based food and all that. Here's what I found. That no one, literally, I just want to give you this, no one was in the proper ratio of 3-to-1 except about 2 to 3 out of 100 people. I'm going to give you all the reasons why. So the people eating a good, healthy, overall clean diet, they're not overdoing their proteins. They're not overdoing really anything. They came in at about a 6 to a 7-to-1. So not terrible. It certainly is not terrible, but their saturation rate in their blood was only about a 5 to a 6%. We want a 9%. The reason why we want a 9% of the omega-3s, we've seen with the research that it leads to a 90% risk of sudden cardiac death. This is why I believe this omega-3 test should be run with every single person. Just do it their normal diet, meaning just take the foods that you like to eat. Because I'm a realist. I really am. I'm a realist because I used to be an idealist. And then I've been in practice forever. And when you get in practice forever, you have to say, what are the vast majority of people going to do? Because I can give you my ideal, but how do I make this easy for you? And that's what I want to do today. So I found that people eating a clean diet, a healthy diet, majority plant-based, were still about a 6 or 7 to 1, and a saturation rate of around a 5 to 6%. We want to get them to a 9%. So I need to get more omega-3s into their body. Okay, so I said, well, what are the people doing that the 2 or 3 people out of 100 that weren't supplementing, because that's a different story. We'll talk about that in a moment. How did they get there? Well, they got there, and all of those people, I'm going to give you all the fish today, but all of those people were eating 2 different types of fish. And I'm going to share those with you in just a moment. So if you want to do it naturally, because I'm a big believer in natural, like, hey, we can do it through food, great. If not, we can still give you the clinical dosage that I've seen work in the real world. And again, it's backed up by research in clinical studies as well. But I'll tell you right now, and I've said it before, I will take a real world practitioner's viewpoint who's been doing this for over a decade, over whatever type of 30-day research, 6-week research, 6-week research you want to show me. I'm going to take the meditation specialist that's been doing it for 20 years rather than the PubMed study on meditation. I'm going to take the personal trainer that's been doing it for 20 years rather than this person who says this interval is best for fat loss. No, I'm going to take those people that are in the trenches with real people who make their living doing this, and whereas if they didn't get results, they wouldn't have a job. That's what I'm looking for. Now, I don't want any hacks. I don't want any shortcuts. I want what is proven to work and then gets results over time. So I did a podcast on this called The Foundation of All Diets, and it allows leeway in your diet. It allows you, if you want, to be more vegan or vegan. It allows you to be more pescatarian. It allows you to have meat a few times a week. It allows for all of those things if you choose it. That was way back. It's called The Foundation of All Diets. I'm going to link all of these links up today because I've been trying to let the podcast be a little bit more helpful because I know that we've done now over 1,000 shows. My idea would be for you to go back, listen to a couple shows every single day, get that functional medicine education. Allow it to last. Allow it to be, your lifetime education that you can just get this information, use it in your life, pass it on to other people, right? Pass it on to your children, pass it on to your parents, your siblings, like anyone that's willing to listen, right? You don't have to convert them, but when they're ready, pass this information along to them. So that episode was The Foundation of All Diets. And all I do is plain and simple give you here's what the majority of people who live the longest life eat. And I just broke it down. Because as I told you before, my goal is to enjoy life. It really is. I'm not going to do things. Now, I did them in the short term in order to get well. So I'm not going to say you can't do that. You need to do things in the short term in order to balance your body. But after that, you want to enjoy life. You really do. I still have cheat meals. I still eat my favorite food. If you see me out at a restaurant, and I'm at a restaurant, because I don't go to restaurants a whole lot, but maybe I'm going there once a week or so with my wife, or I'm out with family or friends, and I have a cheat meal. And if you see me there, I'm going to be enjoying myself. And there's no doubt about it, So it's I still do those things, but the majority of the time, 90% of the time, I'm on point with my diet because I don't think that there's anything more important than what we put into our body. So having said that, there is a foundation for all diets. And for a lot of people, there's debate of, meat versus fish versus eggs, which type of protein. I'll tell you this, you'll be hard pressed to put anything over fish. We're not talking about vegan-based proteins right now. In order for you to cover your bases in terms of protein requirement, but to also get higher levels of omega-3, and I understand grass-fed meat, and I understand pasture-raised eggs and chicken, so I get that, I understand it. The ratios are not going to be as good as fish, and you are going to have less of the saturated fat, and again, I know that doesn't affect everyone, and you're going to have less of the toxins are now debatable, because here's the problem. There are high levels of mercury in some fish, not all, and in some fish. I'm going to go through that today. But I also am going to link up a podcast I did on the mercury levels in fish. After this show today, I would love you to go back. It was way back on episode 12. That was way back when I was doing videos with the podcast. Pretty hilarious. So if you want to see a podcast I did from basically 3 years ago, when the podcast was only 12 days old, it was only a 12-day-old podcast. Check that out. I'll link that up in the show notes today. Simply go to stephencabral.com/1118. 1118, and you'll see all the links right there. I'll mention it again at the end of the show. And then I'm going to link up the PDF that you can download of mercury levels in fish, as well as the image you can take with you. Just save it in the images on your phone, and you can just take it with you when you're shopping. So pretty easy, pretty simple. Okay, so let's get into it today. Why did I want to do this show for you? Well, if you're trying to improve your overall cardiovascular health and decrease inflammation in the body, I want you to raise the omega-3s in your diet. So, I told you before that 2 or 3 people out of 100 would be at the proper ratio of about 3 to 1 from omega-6s to omega-3s. Those people were eating a higher level of fish in their diet, 4 times a week minimum of high omega-3 fish. I'm going to take you through those high omega-3 fish right now. I'm going to give you some of the caveats, and I'm also going to then give you the top 2 fish that I've seen clinically work in my practice for best results. For those people that don't want to eat fish, I'm going to give you the dosage of supplement recommendations, how much, how many days to take those, and even for kids as well for nervous system learning IQ. Those children with higher levels of omega-3 have a higher IQ. You can look this up. This is for children under the age of 10 that have to get their omega-3s. One more thing is that those people, we'll just say people that have a heart attack, 50% have high cholesterol. The other 50% did not have high cholesterol. That means there's more to cardiovascular health than just high cholesterol, saturated fats, etc. Okay? 50% of that came from inflammatory-based issues in the arteries, closing up of those arteries. Well, omega-3s help to decrease inflammation and open back up those arteries, which is why you have amazing statistics that if you have a 9% saturation of omega-3s in the blood, you're going to have a 90% risk reduction of coronary heart disease, or I should say sudden cardiac death. And again, this is linked up. The studies are linked up with the omega-3 test. If you want to run your own omega-3 test, I can't recommend it enough based on your current diet to see if you're already meeting your needs. And if you are, that's what functional medicine is all about. Then you've proven it to yourself that you don't need more omega-3s and that your diet's not too high in arachidonic acid and omega-6s. It will tell you that. But again, I'll link that up. It's an at-home lab test. You can do it pretty much anywhere in the world. It's great. I would give it to your spouse as well, to be honest with you. I would do that. Really simple recommendations will come from it as well. All right, so let's get into those food or specifically fish right now. So great little article, and I'm going to take you through it right now on those fish. So the number one fish that we can go through, and these aren't necessarily in order of importance, but these are all high omega-3 fish. So I'm just going to give them all to you, and then we'll cross-reference them against those that are highest in mercury, because the fish that are highest in mercury, we simply don't want to be eating too many of those. I would say not even more than once per month, because we don't want to be accumulating heavy metals like mercury, which can affect the cardiovascular system, autoimmune-based issues, dementia, etc. Okay, and right before, we're getting the fish list right now, but last week you might want to check this out. This was on, actually just yesterday, how your brain and body gets loaded with toxins, and I do talk about that on how you get heavy metals or metals in general in the brain, in the fat tissues. Check that out because you will want to truly understand how to get those out of your body. All right. The first one we're going to go into is one that most people will know about. So it's, one of the more common one. But we want to be careful with it. So it's called wild salmon. More specifically, wild Alaskan salmon. We want to look at a few things. Okay. So when we are looking at salmon in general, we have to keep in mind a couple things. One is it's becoming overfished. So it's on the seafood watch because it is becoming overfished, but also that it can contain quite a bit of parasites and other toxins from the environment. Okay. Here's one of the reasons why. A lot of the salmon that we're getting is farmed salmon. It literally, and I did a podcast on this as well on farmed versus wild salmon. It's swimming in its own feces in swimming pools that we're essentially growing them in, and it's being fed chicken feces, chicken feed, even food dyes, soy, etc. Food that fish was never meant to get. I'm not going to make that what this show is all about, but we just want to be careful that we're getting sustainably farmed or wild-based salmon. So let me tell you just a little bit about what they're doing in the fishing industry. I'm going to do a separate podcast on this in the future. I think that reluctantly we need to go here, but what we're doing, so like what people are doing that are more ethical, that want to look at more sustainability, they're essentially netting off, not netting the fish, but netting off, roping off certain areas of the ocean where they can sustainably farm, even though it's not true farming, fish. So they're allowing them to live in their natural habitat. They're not feeding them synthetic-based feeds. And it's also, the ocean is naturally cleansing all the waste, because if not, they're swimming in their own waste. So we'll talk about that more in the future. I'm going to go over the high omega-3s today, but it's a conversation we're going to have in the future. Right now, I just steer you more towards the wild salmon. It will cost more. It'll be a little bit more gamey. It's the only way that I can describe it, but omega-3 salmon has a much different taste than farmed salmon. Simply put, though, it has far more omega-3s in it than omega-6s. Okay, number 2 is Arctic char. Arctic char is one of those that you're going to be able to get probably a little bit more frequently in the future. I think you're going to see it a lot more, and here's why. It's another one that's being sustainably raised. So they're able to have a fish like Arctic char. I believe the Japanese name that you might see in the menu is Iwana or Iwana. It's Iwana, I believe. Yes. So you might see that as well. You'll also see it sometimes as a different form of trout. You could see it labeled that way as well. So this one is being sustainably farmed as well, chemical free, and look for that in the future. The bottom line is, so that I don't have to keep saying this over and over, because I'm sure you'll tire of that, is that you need to know where your fish is coming from, right? So if it's local, you can see where it's coming from. That's always great. If you're buying it at a place such as Wegmans or Whole Foods or Sprouts or Erewhon or any one of these places, what you'll want to do is simply say, hey, where's the Arctic char coming from? Or this next one, mackerel, Atlantic mackerel. Where's the mackerel coming from? And you'll ask them and you'll get to know more about your food. I think we humans should know more about what we're putting in our mouth and where it's coming from. So great one to ask as well. Atlantic mackerel. Okay, great one. Super high in omega-3s. Mackerel is one of my top 5 in omega-3s. It's a smaller fish. It's one that I recommend. What do you need to watch out for? There is a king species, sometimes called a Spanish version of mackerel, that can be much larger. The larger the fish, a 99 times out of 100 is going to be higher in mercury. The larger the fish, the more fish it's going to eat, the more accumulation of mercury it will have. One of those exceptions, salmon. It's a vegetarian-based fish. Okay, the next one I want to go over is one that you may not have heard before, and that is a black cod or sable fish. This is actually, if you haven't had it before, and you are not vegan, this is a really tasty fish. So this is a buttery fish. It tastes a lot like a sea bass, in my opinion. More sustainable. It's not on the advisory list, but it can contain a little bit higher level of mercury. It grows just a little bit bigger. Now, it's on the moderate list. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at black cod. It's on the moderate mercury list, which means that you simply won't want to have it more than once to twice a month maximum. But it gives you one more option that if you were to have it once a month, 1 week out of the month, no big deal. A better one to use, especially as you're getting in your natural greens, like a daily fruit and vegetable blend that just has a little daily Craxel chlorella, some daily spirulina and wheatgrass, and those things that can help to chelate and really keep these metals from accumulating in your body. All right, sardines. You'll find out in just a moment. Sardines are one of the top, if not the top, omega-3 that you can take in for a fish. There's no doubt in my mind the level of calcium in them, the omega-3s in them. They're a small fish. They're not going to accumulate the mercury of the other ones. You can get them in a can, packed in olive oil. They're easy to get wild. They are not as harmful for the environment or population or waste. So, hands down, I'll say it right now, hands down, my top pick for a fish and for omega-3s. They're not my favorite fish, to be honest, to eat. They just aren't. I don't love the flavor as much. But in terms of overall health, if you're not always eating just for your taste buds, sardines once a week, twice a week, fantastic. Now, you could have them more, but absolutely fantastic. And they are. And if you're not used to eating them, try the boneless, skinless, packed in olive oil first. Try those ones first. Easier, much more palatable, delicious, and then you can try the whole ones, which are going to have bones and all, And those will be just a little bit more of an acquired taste. All right. Anchovies don't fall far behind. Anchovies are a great one. There is basically the seafood watch out there. They recommend looking for anchovies from the Adriatic Sea. Those are going to be more sustainable. That means it's healthier for the environment. When they're being caught, they're not picking up other types of fish and marine-based animals. So recommending that as well. All right, another one, rainbow trout. Rainbow trout I always talk about in my top 5 list. However, rainbow trout is just simply not as easy to get. It's not. They're doing a little bit of sustainable-based farming of that as well. Again, I don't eat farmed fish. I simply don't eat farmed fish unless that farming is done sustainably and it's done in the ocean. And if these are wild, I'm also recommending a lot of pole-caught varieties, which means they're not netting and harming a lot of other animals in the catching of the fish as well. So I try to be as ethical as I can when I am eating a tissue-based or fish animal-based protein. And that's the same for albacore tuna. It's high in omega-3s, but I can't recommend a lot of tuna because of the high levels of mercury. I really can't. Once a month, enjoy it if you want, not a problem, but I wouldn't do it more than once a month. And I would really look for Atlantic Ocean, North Atlantic, and Pacific Ocean a little bit as well, and look for pole-caught tuna. When they catch tuna, they're catching all sorts of other fish. There's a lot of waste that goes into catching tuna as well, so I can't recommend it. A couple more that are, I would say, probably not as well known. Pacific halibut, right? So Pacific halibut, it's more sustainable, easier caught, and it can be decent. Again, a larger fish, though, maybe once a month. That's it. So these high mercury fish, if it's on the high list, once or twice, all over the board, like not one halibut a month, one tuna a month, one of the other, like cod a month. No, it's 1 or 2 higher mercury fish from the list total per month. So not one of each type. I just want to clarify that. Rockfish. Rockfish is an interesting one. I've only had rockfish once. It's okay. It's not my favorite from my opinion, but it's another one higher in omega-3s. If you see it on a menu, might be one to check out as well. Catfish. I've had catfish a couple times. Catfish is by far one of my least favorite tasting fish, but it can be higher in omega-3s. The problem with catfish, though, a lot of contaminants, a lot of chemicals in catfish, and it can be, yes, lower levels of mercury, but it is a bottom feeder, and it can pick up a lot of contaminants as well. I just personally don't love the taste of it. A couple that you may not have thought about, we're going to end with right here. Mussels. Why mussels? Well, mussels are interesting. Not the highest in omega-3s, but decent, but easier on the ecosystem. And they can actually be grown sustainably because they'll grow literally on a rope that you put down in the ocean, and the mussels can actually grow right along it. So easy to harvest, good for the ecosystem, and much more sustainable. So, we'll do mussels in the summertime for sure, my family and I. And then oysters. Oysters are one of those ones that I have a love-hate relationship with. So oysters are easy to grow. You can grow them. They can be more sustainable, all of that. But here's the issue. And oysters are high in omega-3s. They're high in zinc. They're high in a lot of minerals. They're a pretty nutritious food for you. So I eat them. It's one of those few fish that I eat raw that I know there is the potential for parasites. So with oysters, at least you can actually inspect and look at it and kind of see if there is anything swimming around in there, but some are more microscopic. So that's one of the fish I do have to say is I've really gotten away from a lot of sushi, even though I love it, and I will every once in a while, but oysters are one of those things that I still eat, especially during the summer, and I enjoy them. Am I taking my betaine HCl? Am I taking my hot sauce with it? For sure, to build up some of that digestive fire. But I'm someone that also does a parasite cleanse, a parasite detox. You can just go to equilibriumnutrition.com to see the one that I do. And I do it every year. I mean, that's just the way I just decide to do it. It's part of those 4 yearly detoxes. I did a podcast on that, 4 yearly detoxes that ancient people always used to do. And I don't mean ancient. I mean like people that are in harmony with nature. They always did a deworming, they called it, because they were eating raw meats and they were eating raw foods. They weren't using fire back in the day, and a lot of the foods were raw. I mean, if you ate insects, there could be parasites, and you're not cooking the insects necessarily. So people don't like to talk about that, but in the Amazon and in the Far East, they always did parasite cleanses. They just always did it. They used the sweet wormwood. They used black walnut hulls. They used a lot of these things that we know to kill parasites. And so that was part of the culture, and that's a trade-off that I've decided to do for now. So For me, I'm eating, just to kind of pull everything together now, those are all high omega-3 based fish. I will list them today. Why don't I do that? High omega-3 fish. I need to make a note so that I don't forget for my team. And that's going to be on episode 1118. StephenCabral.com/1118. I'll link up the omega-3 test there. I'll link up the parasite protocol. I'll link up the high Mercury podcast. I'll link up the podcast for the foundation of all diets. And I'll link up this high omega-3 list with a couple caveats for the high mercury-based fish. So what were those two fish? The two fish for people that I saw, regardless of all the other ones that they ate, that came back with a 3-to-1 for omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, was wild salmon and sardines. That's all that I saw people eating that moved the needle. I know mackerel would do it. I know anchovies would do it. You need to eat quite a bit, though. And trout might be there as well. So for sure, sardines and wild salmon, I know they move the needle because I lab test. So as a clinician, we lab test. So we don't guess, we test, right? We always test. So here's what I do. I recommend, again, I work with many people that are vegan in my practice. I've been vegan myself multiple times. My body, after about 6 months, and I know that people are going to say, you didn't do it right, all this, believe me when I say I did it right. And I would love to be, because it's where my heart is, it's where my mind is, but it's not where my body is yet. Now, maybe that will change in the future. But for right now, I'm strongest, healthiest, and all of those. And so I can do all of the things that I want to be able to do with that energy. But again, that's a topic for another show. And again, I believe in ethical, I believe in sustainability, and I just do my best. That's all I can say. I just try to do my best for the world that we live in, so that when my 2 daughters grow up, that they have a healthy world, that we just don't pollute it all the time, that we don't overfish our seas. So I try to be conscious of all that. I don't necessarily eat an animal or fish-based protein every single day, but about 3 or 4 times per week I do. And when I do, the majority of the time, I'm choosing fish. Once a week, I do eggs, pasture-based eggs. And every once in a while, I will have some type of meat. So the majority of those choices are fish, and particularly in the warmer weather. When I'm in a warmer climate, when I'm on vacation somewhere warm, I'm eating absolutely more fish and less meat, if any, at those times. During the winter, when my body could use the animalism, when it could use more heat, when it could use more acid for the body, as we see from all the colder climate tribes of people, that is when I might have a little bit more meat, a little bit more protein. But again, that's a topic for another day's show. I will link up, again, the omega-3s. One thing I did say I would give you as well is for those people that aren't eating the high omega fish on a daily basis, for the days that you're not, or even the days that you are, just to keep it consistent, I do recommend a good quality omega-3 supplement. The one that I recommend is definitely a higher EPA than DHA. Again, I never knew this until I lab tested. Now I do. So I recommend something called Omega-3 Support. It comes as a capsule, a larger capsule. And for those people that don't like the larger soft gels, I'm recommending going with a liquid. For just typical ongoing daily usage, if you don't know your levels, I recommend 2 soft gels a day of the Omega-3 Support or 1 teaspoon a day of the liquid. And you can even just put the liquid on your food as well. You won't even taste it. So hopefully that was helpful. I'll link those Omega-3 supplements up today. Those supplements, by the way, are guaranteed to get your levels up to that proper level using a real omega-3 test. They work amazingly well. And again, I do always before and after levels. Some people might need a little bit more omega-3. Some people might need a little bit less. But we always start at the 2 capsules of the omega-3 or the 1 teaspoon. They'll get you the clinical results that you're looking for to get down below that 5-to-1 ratio. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please do feel free to pass along to anyone else you believe it could serve. And for all show notes and links, head on over to StephenCabral.com/1118. Take care, everyone. Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.